Listen, I want to thank you for writing this book because I have my son and 7 of his cousins, and I call them Camp David. So this is
Breaking news. Justin Baldoni has just scored a major win, and by extension Blake Lively has taken a significant loss. The situation raises questions about hypocrisy, especially as Lively has reportedly urged the courts to limit public discussion while legal actions continue to expose communications, including call and text logs tied to Wayfarer-related parties. Once celebrated as an internet favorite, Blake Lively alongside Ryan Reynolds has watched her public image and career momentum falter following Baldoni's headline-grabbing court victory, with her attempt to sway public sympathy backfiring dramatically. Rather than a focused legal or PR strategy, a scattershot approach appears to have undermined her position, placing both her and Reynolds under an unforgiving spotlight. Old footage has resurfaced that seems to confirm long-standing claims about Lively's desire to control productions, even misleading directors to gain creative authority, reinforcing the perception that this outcome was not the result of a simple misunderstanding or minor error. What began as Justin Baldoni's passion project at Wayfarer Studios reportedly devolved into what insiders describe as a hostile takeover, with Lively asserting an almost unquestioned entitlement to shape every aspect of the film. Though she has publicly framed her actions as a desire for greater authorship and creative fulfillment, beyond merely showing up and looking cute, reports allege she crossed professional boundaries by rewriting scenes, altering costume designs, firing the original editor, and assembling her own team of creatives, sidelining Baldoni's original hires. These moves, far from being casual input from an engaged actor, are portrayed as a calculated effort to seize full creative control, generating intense behind-the-scenes conflict. Now, the very tactics Lively allegedly used to marginalize Baldoni during production appear to be turning against her in court, leaving her narrative exposed and her reputation facing serious consequences. What may have initially felt to some like having the rug pulled out from under them, escalated dramatically with Lively's most serious misstep, an unauthorized screening, while the film was still in the editing phase. Despite explicit instructions from Wayfarer Studios to show only a brief unfinished segment, Lively allegedly insisted on presenting an unapproved rough cut of the entire film at a literary event, even transporting the footage herself, blindsiding the studio and violating standard industry protocols that tightly control early cuts. By bypassing the official process, she reportedly undermined the film's distribution strategy and handed Justin Baldoni critical leverage in his legal case. What began as a dispute over creative boundaries quickly escalated further, with allegations that Lively shifted into full attack mode by leaking sensitive information to the New York Times in an effort to damage Baldoni and Wayfarer Studios, timing the article to coincide with the escalation of the lawsuit and frame herself as the aggrieved party. Insiders claim this media strategy spectacularly backfired in court, where Lively gained little traction. Her attempt to impose a gag order on Baldoni's attorney, Brian Friedman, was dismissed. Her effort to avoid depositions was denied, and the judge refused to limit Friedman's ability to speak publicly, allowing him to openly challenge her narrative. These rulings dismantled Lively's PR strategy, leaving her unable to control the public conversation while simultaneously appearing on television, making jokes about the situation, a move critics called hypocritical given her push to silence discussion in court. As the judge questioned inconsistencies in her claims, particularly the scope and timing of the alleged campaign against her, the legal defeats mounted, and the fallout began to ripple through her career, with industry insiders reportedly growing wary of working with an actress perceived as willing to overstep boundaries, seize control of productions, and create costly turmoil that studios are increasingly unwilling to risk. The situation is deeply unsettling, especially for anyone who believes facts should come before judgment, as Justin Baldoni suffered real professional consequences long before the full story emerged. The stakes extend beyond Blake Lively to Ryan Reynolds, who is now increasingly implicated amid allegations that he supported her takeover of the project, possibly to position himself for a sequel, putting his once unassailable Hollywood reputation at risk. Lively entered the legal battle expecting to control the narrative, but instead faced a humiliating series of courtroom defeats that exposed what critics describe as repeated legal miscalculations by her team. Her attempts to silence Baldoni's attorney, Brian Friedman, avoid depositions, and shape public perception all backfired, culminating in the court's firm rejection of her gag order request on February 19, 2025. Freeing Friedman to continue speaking openly, the judge's refusal to grant broad latitude shattered Lively's strategy, allowing Friedman, who has already labeled her accusations strategic and dishonest, to publicly dismantle her claims without restraint. Matters worsened when the court denied her effort to avoid questioning under oath, to rejecting arguments that her status justified shielding her from deposition and ruling instead that she must answer directly to Baldoni's lawyers. This decision opens the door to intense scrutiny of every alleged action during production, from rewriting scenes and hiring her own editor to leaking information to the press and attempting to dominate Wayfarer Studios. Compounding the fallout, Baldoni's defamation lawsuit against the New York Times has escalated the stakes further, forcing Lively to confront her actions under oath with no ability to script her way out. Critics argue that her allegations have repeatedly unraveled in the face of documented evidence, particularly text messages, casting her claims in a far harsher light. The judge's refusal to limit what Baldoni's legal team can reveal has only amplified the damage, as Friedman continues to accuse Lively of hypocrisy for leaking confidential material while seeking to restrict access to evidence. Across Hollywood, industry insiders are watching closely, increasingly skeptical of what they see as attempts to manipulate both the legal process and public opinion, and many executives appear wary of an actress whose documented efforts to seize creative control and rewrite narratives on and off screen now threaten to overshadow her career. Justin Baldoni attorneys responded forcefully to the latest filing, once again calling out what they characterize as contradictions in Blake Lively's legal strategy. As industry reaction continues to intensify, a source from a major Hollywood studio told Variety on February 22, 2025, that Lively's repeated courtroom losses are sending shockwaves through the business, with studios now seriously reconsidering future collaborations due to concerns over her unpredictable legal behavior. The irony has not gone unnoticed. After aggressively publicizing and litigating her claims in the media, Lively is now attempting to block public access to evidence, prompting critics to question why transparency suddenly became a problem. Speaking to The Hollywood Reporter on February 25, 2025, a legal analyst bluntly described the situation as career suicide, noting that every maneuver has backfired while the industry watches in real time, with thousands of pages of documents including text messages and emails set to be scrutinized, her deposition scheduled, and Baldoni's attorney Brian Friedman free to speak without restriction. The illusion of control has collapsed. Observers point out that it was Lively's own team that leaked private communications to the New York Times without due process, making her current claims of reputational harm appear deeply inconsistent. As a result, her career is now widely seen as teetering on life support, with Hollywood increasingly viewing her as a liability rather than a leading figure. This downfall was not the result of a single mistake but a cascade of calculated missteps that spiraled out of control, beginning with a PR crisis in early 2024 and reaching a breaking point by January 2025, when fans criticized her handling of domestic abuse themes in It Ends With Us. The release of a romanticized trailer on January 14 sparked fierce backlash for misrepresenting the book's core message, forcing Sony to re-read it and re-release it just days later, though the damage was already done. Subsequent legal claims, press statements, and even jokes made publicly by Ryan Reynolds about her allegations only compounded the fallout, reinforcing the perception that her team prioritized publicity over consistency. What was once a carefully curated public image has unraveled into a cautionary tale, with many insiders believing the reputational damage may be irreversible.
Script that we've been given, right? Girls are weak and boys are strong. This is what's being subconsciously communicated to hundreds.
What often gets lost is a difference between emotional reassurance and factual evidence. When a woman has a bad breakout, friends instinctively say it doesn't look that bad to make her feel better, but that kind of support can't later be repackaged as proof of wrongdoing, a point already raised back in October. Against that backdrop, the sudden emergence of a lawsuit raised serious questions about timing, especially since Baldoni and Lively's on-screen chemistry was praised early in production, before rumors began circulating that Baldoni was difficult on set, followed by Blake accusing him of misconduct by December 2024. Many now question whether this escalation was coincidental, with some arguing her legal team leaned on familiar matura tactics that, for a time, didn't require strong evidence so much as pressure on men eager to avoid prolonged court battles. By February 2025, another theory surfaced suggesting Blake and Baldoni had developed a close off-screen rapport that made Ryan Reynolds uneasy, fueled by leaked text messages first reported by the New York Times on February 8, 2025, in which Baldoni sent late-night voice notes discussing the script, and personal struggles messages that weren't overtly flirtatious but intimate enough to raise eyebrows. Lively's defense insists she never attempted to take over the film and that her claims were strictly about sexual harassment, emphasizing that none of her requested protections were tied to creative control. Yet critics point out inconsistencies, including her claim of discomfort during a dance scene while allegedly engaging Baldoni out of character herself. Reynolds was reportedly aware of the frequent communication and unhappy with it, and a source told Variety on February 12, 2025, that while he wasn't controlling, he was clearly uncomfortable with how much Blake and Justin were talking. Meanwhile, Baldoni's career collapsed with stunning speed. His agency dropped him in early January 2025, podcast deals vanished, and to film projects evaporated, prompting observers to ask who benefited from the fallout. Legal analysts note the lawsuit extends beyond a single film into broader Hollywood power dynamics, but studios care less about moral arguments than financial risk. And once a scandal starts costing money instead of generating buzz, executives get nervous. Questions also linger about Lively's choices, such as why she didn't request an intimacy coordinator going forward if she felt unsafe, or why she allegedly invited Baldoni into her trailer after the very scene she later described as deeply uncomfortable, leaving the narrative riddled with contradictions that continue to fuel skepticism. Wayfarer Studios has already moved to distance itself from Justin Baldoni despite his status as a founding member, removing references to him from upcoming projects. While Blake Lively's own production reputation has reportedly collapsed in parallel, sources close to Sony say she significantly overstepped her role on It Ends With Us. And insiders told Variety on February 10th that studio executives now view her as difficult to work with, prompting major producers to hesitate before attaching her to future projects. By February 19, 2025, Deadline reported that discussions for a major Netflix series had abruptly gone silent. Baldoni's team disputes claims that Lively lacked support on set, stating she had full access to an intimacy coordinator and was never deprived of one, accusing her instead of retroactively framing non-issues as misconduct. Hollywood, however, remembers how these controversies tend to play out. After the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial, studios avoided both actors for years, and even Depp's legal victory did not fully restore his career, underscoring that the industry prioritizes stability over verdicts. Lively and Baldoni now occupy that same uncomfortable space, where regardless of who prevails legally, studios are wary of the baggage. A central point of conflict remains Lively's claim that Baldoni deviated from a pre-approved script she signed onto, allegedly introducing gratuitous sexual changes, a charge Baldoni flatly denies, insisting those elements were already in the script and noting that Lively herself initiated unscripted intimacy at times, which he interpreted as collaborative chemistry. In Hollywood, forgiveness is transactional and driven by numbers, and Lively's future may hinge on her next project, an untitled crime drama slated for release in 2025. If it underperforms, studios are likely to sever ties, while even success may only earn her a cautious second chance. A February 25, 2025 report from The Hollywood Reporter noted that her star power is no longer what it once was, and this scandal has only accelerated that decline, making the stakes clear. This is no longer just about public perception, but about whether audiences and studios are still willing to invest in Blake Lively at all. That as the lawsuit descended further into chaos, troubling behind-the-scenes behavior began to surface, particularly Blake Lively's unusually close relationship with her much younger co-star Isabella Ferrer. Ferrer, who was 23 at the time and played the younger version of Lively's character in It Ends With Us, reportedly became deeply entwined in Lively's personal life, with accounts suggesting that Lively, then 37 and a mother of 4, invited her over for sleepovers, purchased expensive gifts, and treated her like a younger sister as early as December 2020. A Variety article dated February 10, 2025, described the bond as intensely personal and almost strategic, prompting growing concern over the power imbalance between a seasoned Hollywood star and a young actress still establishing her career. These concerns intensified as Lively appeared to contradict herself, arguing that any deviation from the pre-approved script was unacceptable while simultaneously defending her own extensive rewrites as justified, leaving critics asking where the boundaries actually were. Some observers believe Lively leveraged her influence to pull Ferrer into her inner circle as a way to secure loyalty during the legal battle, raising fears that the relationship crossed from mentorship into potential manipulation. Ferrer publicly supported Lively's allegations against Justin Baldoni in a January 2025 interview, saying Lively made her feel safe, but skepticism followed, given Lively's ability to impact Ferrer's future opportunities. Industry insiders suggested Ferrer may have felt pressured to side with Lively to avoid career repercussions, a suspicion reinforced by a February 14, 2025 report, describing the relationship as more strategic than sincere. Critics also pointed to text messages showing Lively repeatedly altering scenes while framing herself as a creative force rather than a controlling presence, arguing that the big sister dynamic conveniently aligned with her legal strategy as Baldoni pushed back. Some commentators went further, suggesting Lively may have been positioning Ferrer as a supportive witness if the case went to trial, a theory echoed by a New York Post journalist on February 17, 2025, who noted that allies would have been crucial to reinforcing her claims. As public trust in Lively's narrative continues to erode and Hollywood grows increasingly wary, questions surrounding the ethics of her relationship with Ferrer, whether it was genuine mentorship or calculated legal positioning, have only deepened the controversy, further clouding an already uncertain future for the case.